Well, welcome. I am so glad you have decided to join us today. We know there are lots of options out there, and I always appreciate when you take the time to stop in here and check us out. And I always strive to make sure that we give you really great value as well as some interesting conversation. And you're definitely in for that today. Today, we're going to be chatting with Judy Winslow about negotiating from a new leadership paradigm to help amplify your impact. So, welcome, Judy. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
And if those of you haven't had the pleasure of being introduced to Judy before, with over 3 decades of experience assisting leaders to develop strategies so they can build their business with soul, Judy Winslow has won numerous awards for brand identity. She co-founded a marketing firm in New York City. She founded TEDxSarasota. She's a Canfield Success Principles Trainer and an international best-selling author. So she's going to have loads of great gems for us here today. I thought we'd start, Judy, asking if you have any tips about or advice that you'd have for us on negotiating our mindset, because everything sort of starts there. How do we better negotiate our mindset so we can show up more powerfully and get more of what we want in life and in business?
Ooh, Cindy, I love that. That's so juicy. Well, for me, mindset is kind of everything. And I am sort of a living example of what happens when we choose what we're thinking and we choose and become aware of how we participate in creating that mindset and then how that plays out in the world. And the reason that I say that is because I was a very dark, depressed, suicidal kid who I would say I like accidentally retrained my brain. But now that I have that awareness and that I have been pursuing a very particular path for the last few decades, once I learned this, it's really made such a difference, not only in my awareness cognitively, my day-to-day mindset, but literally in what my world looks like how my world is colored and what my perspectives are and how possibility lives. And so much has changed as a result of how my mindset has shifted.
Yeah. Now, you really piqued my interest when you said you accidentally retrained your brain, because that's quite a shift. I mean, you're such a joyful person. You talk about building businesses with soul and coming from a childhood where you had sort of some suicidal ideation. What was that accidental reshift? How did that happen? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I just was in this really, really dark place. And I kept telling my parents, like, I think I need therapy.
Wow, good for
And
you.
they thought I was
Self-aware.
they thought out there, they're like, what? Yeah. They were not of the mindset,
Yeah.
the belief paradigm, if you will. They came from the school of thought of like, no kid of ours needs
Yeah,
therapy.
of course.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
But it
Not
wasn't fine at all. It
how.
was not pretty and fine. So they just didn't understand it. So I just continued on my way, getting darker and more entrenched, not understanding that we create our own neural pathways. I mean, like, think of how much we don't know that we don't know
Yeah.
when we're in a particular space or way of being or negative mindset or trajectory, if you will, like when we call it spiraling.
Yeah.
And we don't have that ability to rise above and see what's actually going on. And first of all, is it even yours
Yeah.
to own? Which I later found out wasn't my energy.
Yeah.
In the soup that I was being affected by because I'm so sensitive,
Yeah.
which has turned out to be one of my greatest gifts. It's also been a real curse
Yeah.
when I don't and when I didn't have the capacity or the knowledge to understand my role or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So that's one. It got so dark for me that I think out of a survivalist
Yeah.
attitude, I kind of pulled myself back from this darkness because I always felt like I was going to fall into this dark, deep, ugly hole and never come out. And
Yeah.
then many years later, I figured out I started to see the same sort of visual in my head, but instead of me falling into this deep, dark, awful hole, I started to see it because of my now different understanding of myself and what I'm here to do in the world.
Yeah.
I started to see it as an entrepreneurial type of mindset in that I think that entrepreneurs and leaders and those on the cutting edge are literally on I like see us on the edge of this great abyss.
Yeah.
But instead of like falling into the abyss, we're actually holding hands. And what we
Hmm.
don't realize is when we all go to jump, we're not jumping in, we're actually taking off together.
Oh,
And
I
we have this like unseen power behind
yeah.
us as like the wind be I just got chills. The wind
Yeah.
beneath the wings. And I feel like it's almost like an ancestral battle cry, but instead of
Yeah.
it being for war, it's for peace, it's for harmony, it's
Yeah.
for bringing forth compassion and kindness and inclusion and a lot of what's not being modeled at this current
Yes.
moment. Yeah, so to me,
Oh,
it's about it changed my life.
you said you got chills and say that is such a beautiful image, Judy, and it so beautifully exemplifies, the reason why I started the art of feminine negotiation. How I love that image you've created for us about all standing there holding hands, like get away from competition to collaboration, and how we can all rise up if we stand together. And you're quite right. My goodness, if there was ever a time we needed it, it is now. Now, you mentioned leadership, and I find that great leadership skills and great negotiation skills often go together. And a lot of people find that based on that old model where great leaders and great negotiators are people who beat their chest and talk the longest and loudest. And I think we got that backwards. So I'd love your views on what are the key skills or the hallmarks, if you will, that make a great negotiator and leader.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing this conversation forward because to me it's so needed and I'm so passionate about it. So, if I get a little fiery on my little rant, please reel me back in. But I really believe that we are living in a very special time. And for many years, I've been saying that I think it's awesome that so many of our business models are broken
Yeah.
because we get to create something new. We're moving
Yeah.
into this new world in this new time. But right now, I think it's a lot, it goes beyond that. And it goes into this conversation of leadership. I think the first part that we really have to take a consideration of and own is that we are all leaders of our lives and our business.
Yeah.
So it's not an either or, it's an and. And if you're sitting aside waiting for other people to step up and step in and do the thing and do what's right or whatever, if not now, when? A. And then B is you have to choose, and we all do every day, our own model of leadership. So if you think a leader is a bully, that's what you're going to be aware of. It's like looking for the red
Yeah.
cars, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't want a red car, when you want a white car, all you see is white cars. When you want a black car, all you see is black cars. When you say, "Hey, I wonder what new color cars there are this year," you start seeing all these weird color cars. Well,
Yeah.
the same is true for your perception of leadership. Whether you're looking for someone who is a unifier and who brings people together, or if you're looking for a divider, those are represented. But my question is, what kind of leader are you?
Yeah.
And the first place to look is your own life, because the first thing we're leading is ourselves.
Yeah.
So we have to take responsibility for our personal leadership. And this is a big Jack Canfield and many others who are big in personal development. This is kind of their first concept, if you will, that we have to own what is occurring. Because if we're owning that we have some impact on the cosmos, on the frequency, on the energy, then we have to take ownership that we are directing that for ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we start to change our energy, again, something I completely stumbled upon, when we change our energy, we are then impacting all those vibrations, that butterfly
Yeah.
concept, right? That paradigm that then we're radiating out. And we know that because we know when we've walked into a party that's a dud, or we've walked into an office where they just had a flight in the lobby, what
Yeah.
happened? We're like, oh, row, row, row. We
Yeah.
know what happened there. We
Yeah.
know that blood has been spilled, so to
Yes.
speak. We don't want to, if that's not who you want to be, if you want to be somebody that expands and helps people grow, and we want to lift as we climb, leaders are mentors. Leaders are enablers of others. We're not bullying and threatening and taking away our toys or whatever you want to call it. We're looking for solutions. We
Yeah.
have a problem solver's head.
Yeah.
It's different.
And I love the word that you chose, unifier versus divider. I haven't heard anybody frame it that way. And it really struck a chord with me, having practiced social justice and represented many trade unions over the years, that that idea about together we're stronger is such a powerful concept. And I want to really just put an extra pin in for our listeners out there. When Judy started answering that question, she talked about the fact that if things are breaking down in our business models, we can see it as an opportunity. And I want to really invite you all to take a moment to think about that in our lives, where we shift that mindset from seeing obstacles as things to be avoided to seeing them as beautiful opportunities. I think that's such a game changer. And since we're talking about leadership, and I know your expertise is in brand as well, what is brand leadership, Judy?
Again, thank you for asking. So, this is actually something that I think people have an awareness of, but they haven't any language for it, and or they haven't taken the concept and principles and then actually seen how they apply.
Yeah.
So, what do we know about great brands? We know that great brands stand out. We also know that there are two ways to go about that. One is you just naturally do. You are somebody who goes against the tide, is a trendsetter, like all those things. You naturally go viral. Everything you touches turns to gold. You know who you are, right? So for them, it's very natural. But then there's others of us who have a greater awareness, a greater depth, a greater ability to not only connect the dots, but to construct almost an experience. So that's what's happening. And so most brands are built in that manner. They're intentional, right? So when we all are a brand, we are a walking, talking brand.
Yeah.
We can either decide that that is correct, and we know that, just like we can pretend that there's no gravity, but there's still gravity. It's still.
Yeah.
So your brand is the same. Like literally, your brand is happening as you're being formed in utero, if you will, not in the first 26 weeks, people. But anyway, we won't go there. I'm just kidding. Sorry. I don't mean to get political, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like when something is when you're cooking it up, when you're thinking about it,
Yeah.
you're in a very particular mindset and a very particular phase of creation. But when you're bringing it forth, you've already created it in your head. That's already branding. The
Yeah.
glasses that you choose, this, the orange shirt memo that you got for today that we both wore, whatever it is, that's how you know that you're part of a community, that you're part of a tribe, that you're part of a population, a system, a
Yeah.
fan group, a loyalist, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So when you know that, you can then construct your brand. And that's what I help people do. I help them to consciously create what they want their consumer, the client, the customer, to have available to them, to have that understanding, to expand and scale in line with their energy and their resources and their team and all the things. So, how do
Yeah.
you build your brand in a logical, substantial, sustainable, joyful, and
Love that.
fulfilling way that will impact the world positively?
Yeah.
That's who I am. Yeah.
And you just mentioned joyful, so I gather you sort of touched on it already, but can you give us a little deeper on what you mean when you talk about building a business with soul? That really resonated with me. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I consider your brand. So your brand isn't a logo. It's not a website. It's not a press release. It's not your last Instagram post. It includes all of that. But it's like having the biggest, bestest, coolest diamond ever. And it's underneath this pile of dirt and coffee grounds. Like you can't see it. So
Yeah.
we want to get that diamond out. We want to polish every aspect of that. And that literally includes from who are you interacting with on the street, to how you treat the other moms when you pick kids up at school, to how you participate in that fundraiser that's happening next week, to who you're supporting, where your dollars go, and how you arrive, whether it's with a smile or a frown. Remember, your energy never lies.
Yeah.
So we are taking all of this with us. So what I help is when I'm helping to grow the business, we're also helping to grow the leader and the leadership so that everyone in the organization shows up as a positive, free thinking, contributing member of that community. Because we all know that there's people that will hide in the back, and then
Yeah.
there's other people that they want you to hear everything they are thinking right this minute.
Yeah.
But how can we integrate all of it so that we're all winning? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah.
have you ever even sat with that question that's not just about how am I winning and how do I sell more
Yeah.
widgets?
And
That's
so important these days. I feel like we've become such an extrovert driven society with everybody, look at me, look at me. And, my daughter's an introvert, and it was such a wake up call for me because I recognize that we often talk over introverts and they're not likely to just jump in and sort of rule the room. And we lose so much valuable contribution when we're not able to do that. So I love your intentionality around that. And what are
and
some
wait,
actionable
and
sort
I
of
just have to
yeah,
interrupt you because you said
absolutely.
something so important. So one of the reasons that I am on the soapbox and I'm so passionate, we'll call it.
Yeah.
I was going to say aggressive, but one of the reasons that I am is because I was that kid that wanted to check out because I didn't fit
Yeah.
in. I was that person that didn't feel heard and that people would talk over and probably still do. And I think as a result of that, we're losing when we look at the suicide rate and the mental health
Yeah.
situation now in the US for sure.
Yeah.
It's very distressing. And I think part of that is because these sensitive kids, these introverted kids, of which I am still one, I'm great like this. But you
Yeah.
put me in a room with a couple hundred people, and I'm like, oh my God. But we're losing these kids, and we
Yeah.
need them. They are our future. They're future leaders, and they don't fit in because they're not supposed to fit in.
Yeah.
I really hope some mommy or kid hears this.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to fit in. No one on this planet is like you.
Yeah.
And we have this weird expectation that somebody's going to get exactly who we are in any given moment and validate that. And when we're young and we don't get that, we really think there's something terribly wrong. And we need to
Yeah.
normalize this opportunity to share with everyone, our friends, our family, our kids,
Yeah.
that the way that you do life and see the world has so much value and to not be discounted or
Yeah.
discount others because they're not just like you.
Oh,
So,
and the ripple effect. We should do another episode one time on just that issue because I think it's so important. And I want to really reinforce for our listeners out there when Judy used the words that we need these kids, we need these people. And it's so, and we've written, and again, now, if ever, when we're in such a polarized state with such divisiveness, people who tend to be introverted are much more thoughtful. They don't give that knee-jerk reaction. They tend to be more thoughtful before they speak. And my goodness, do we ever need that now? We need the time to allow ourselves to truly listen and take in what other people are saying and offer a perspective seeking to understand. So I love that you really stopped me to put a pin in that, Judy, because I
yes.
agree. I think it's important. And can you give us some actionable sort of steps or strategies that our listeners can use so that they can amplify their influence, whether in business or personally, frankly, to be able to have that impact?
Gosh, there's so many things, but what just came literally flew into my consciousness as you said that was it would be really cool if more of us, myself included, we took more time to have conversations that were very divergent,
Yeah,
meaning we spoke with people that had very different views,
yeah,
and we had conversations that allowed for curiosity so we could explore that with one another. So
yeah,
that's one, like to be super divergent and have that in your world.
yeah,
And then the other is to be super convergent, which means really to chatting with people like we are right now, that we
yeah,
are in agreement and we have come from a very similar values and
yeah,
morals and worldview. And then have a really give yourself some time to sit with that and think about what are my takeaways? Like we need independent thinking.
yeah,
Hello. And really the only way, Cindy, you keep kind of dancing around this, but this is all an inside job, people. Like it doesn't show up out there until we figure it out in here.
yeah,
So to me, that's what you're speaking to is give the space and time and air to convergent and divergent points of view, and then see what there is for you
yeah.
within that.
Yeah, and thanks for reinforcing that. I mean, that's why I started with the mindset question because I agree. I think our first and most important negotiation is always going to be with ourselves, how we choose to show up, who we want to be. And I like that you talked about that idea that getting more intentional. We live in such echo chambers now where the feeds that we're getting on our social media and in our circle are being controlled by sort of outside sort of corporate interest and feeding us more and more of what we already believe. And we're becoming less and less likely to have those important conversations, to be able to truly listen and try and understand people who think differently than us, who show up differently than us, who perhaps have profoundly different views about things. That's how we're going to start making. And what does bold leadership look like to you, or is there such a thing?
Well, so we go back to the beginning when you asked me about, the branding conversation. So what we do know about great brands is they stand out. So
Yeah,
what we know about bold brand leadership is that those are the ones that are really willing to try something new. There are so many categories and industries where you go to the websites of the top five, they all look the same.
yeah,
It's crazy. And then if the suggestion is, hey, we could easily have you show up in a very different way and have you stand apart from this crowd. And they're like, oh, we couldn't possibly.
yeah,
And then because there's this thinking, the way it's always been done kind of stuff. So the first place to really look is where are you? And oftentimes it's very challenging to do this by yourself. It's why you need people like me to work with and collaborate with.
yeah,
Because when we form a little team together, we are so much more powerful because we can then start playing off one another. And I can see some of your attributes and what shines bright for you that you may not be able to see, and vice versa. But it's really, are you willing to step into your true voice, your true, I call it like, will you have the audacity
yeah,
to stand out and be your authentic self and not follow the other who you perceive as the
yeah,
leader, the industry leader? Do you have to copy Apple? Do you have to copy this one?
yeah,
No, this isn't, if anything, especially with AI and everything that's coming, now more than ever, your unique everything, your voice, how you look, who you be. We actually, that I believe will become a very important currency
yeah,
as the similarity thing and homogenization of all the things
yeah.
accelerates.
Yeah. And it's a shame you look at it like at elementary school, everybody's trying so hard to fit in and be like everybody else. And nobody who's ever really succeeded in the world has done that. They stand out with those differences. And my gosh, do we see that a lot? Coming from a long background in the legal community up until relatively recently. Oh, same, 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 right? So I'm wondering if you have any examples you can share or just an idea for maybe how a law firm, for example, could show that bold leadership to stand out differently.
Oh, so there are, I love that. And so I have to, my caveat is my dad was an attorney. And so, and this is way back when. So he wore a suit every day to work and like
Yeah.
his closet was filled with all the things and he would get all suited up. And, so we had this idea, like he had this idea that he had to wear a suit and have a briefcase and, like all the things. And, now we have this, you've got to have the Birkin bag and drive a Maserati and wear your Louboutins and whatever that thing is. But really, your brand is so much more than that. And so the same is true in the legal profession. And part of it is, or any like real estate or any kind of financial industry category, but it's really to look at what's going on in your industry
Yeah.
and then play with, like in a playful way, how
Yeah.
could you show up differently? So, like, let's say you go to a trade show and everyone's like, oh, you put your name in the thing and you'll win an iPad, right? Well, so what if you did something completely crazy and you had like, Daffy Duck there and I don't, like just something like
Yeah.
how can you be playful with this so that you're not unprofessional? No one's asking you to be unprofessional. What we're attempting to look at is how can you be approachable,
Yeah.
professional, and embraced and heard and seen, really top of mind to
Yeah.
your ideal clients, which for a lot of people is not about being the biggest on the block
Yeah.
or the bullies on the block. There's something else that really helps you build relationships That's the future, people.
Yeah.
Actual
Yeah.
relationships. How can you build relationships and then shine a light on that in a way that's
Yeah.
fun?
And I really like this idea about playfulness. And I want to, again, just really hit that home for our listeners. I mean, certainly in the legal profession, we do not do that enough. We take ourselves too seriously. And I'd say in business generally across the board, the image of the successful business is about showing up with that. Like, the more we allow ourselves to play, the more we're going to incur that sort of creativity, the more we're going to be able to think outside the box, the more we're going to be attractive to other people, the more magnetic, make our businesses
Yeah,
and our firms more
100%.
magnetic, and have that relationship that you're
That's right.
talking about,
So
Judy.
instead of saying sending a letter, send like we call it lumpy mail, send something that's a 3D object
Yeah.
that, people can use in a fun way that will keep you highly
Yeah.
visible. Like many years ago, we created these little tiny track shoes, like little tiny high top sneakers for somebody. They were launching something, and
Yeah.
we were talking about, run as fast as you can to get it. But it was set up so that you could put them over your rearview mirror. So now
Okay.
they're like little dice things,
Yeah.
but with somebody's logo on them.
Yeah.
So, like, how can you be just more fun and more
Yeah.
playful and different? How can you stand out
Yeah.
and be unforgettable?
And how would you define success? Because again, that's one of those things I'm just on a mission about that. I feel like we've been indoctrinated into a definition of success that does not serve us. So I'd be curious about how you define success in life
Well,
and in business.
yeah. So one of my I call them isms. Like we all have them. Mine happen to be called Judy isms.
It makes
Does that
sense.
work? But and I branding, so you got to make up something. But anyway, one of my isms is that fitting in is not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you've mentioned is when we're young, we're taught is how to fit in, have a buddy, have a partner, laugh at the same time, wear the same clothes.
Yeah.
Like I was sitting on a beach. Oh, I was sitting on a beach in Jamaica just a couple weeks ago. It's a long story. I really needed it for my health. But anyway, I was laughing hysterically because all these people are walking down the beach. Now they're all different, they're tourists, right? But
Yeah.
every group of them, like these girls all had on the same kind of bathing suit. Then these girls all had the same drink carriers,
Yeah.
right? They had the same tumblers. Then these boys had all the same printed kind of shorts. They were
Yeah.
particular. Then these kids they were all at the same, place on their waistband, undies sticking out like all the, and
Yeah.
they're it's like this whole tribal thing. It's
Yeah.
hysterical, but we don't, it's so unconscious.
Yeah.
Why do people in the law profession wear suits? Because
Yeah.
everybody else.
It's so true. Yeah. And governs our thinking, governs everything, what we all feel the need to think like everybody else, as opposed to
Oh, yeah,
putting up your
we're
hand.
not.
Well,
You're
wait a
not.
minute.
You're not thinking like, yeah. So
What,
that's what we want to do. We want to leverage what makes you you.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And what do you have any tips for us on negotiating team dynamics, especially today? I think that's something that is falling apart in a lot of areas because
Oh
the
my gosh. I have so many thoughts about this. One of the things that I feel very concerned about, and that I talk to my people about a lot, because culture building is such a big deal.
Yeah.
We spend more hours at work than we do anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't care what part of your life you're in love with, you're still
Yeah.
spending time at work. And what we're not acknowledging is how we are supporting one another at work. And in the most cases, we're not. That's
Yeah.
just the truth. We're not. We're too busy. We've got too much noise. There's too much chaos. It's too hard to focus. And to tune it all out is really challenging. So to
Yeah.
work within that, the only way to do that is to shut out everything except your lane. And
Yeah.
so that means that we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot. So one of the things I think that's just so critical is being aware as a leader. And I don't care if that means you're the owner, you're in some sort of management, you're some sort of team, you answer the phones, you sweep the floor. You're all part of the
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
So how are you then impacting that culture and acknowledging that we are now, all of those people are coming with their traumas. We all have what's happening in the collective right now, which is negative chaos,
Yeah.
fear, all the very negative attributes right
Yeah.
now, right? It's very hard to shine any light. So we have to really work on that.
Yeah.
But besides what's going on in the world, we have our own personal baggage. We have what's happening in the world on the heels of a pandemic and years of lockdown. We have so many people who are struggling just to eat, stay alive, have a roof over their, like, this is a
Yeah.
challenging time. So for us to really stay on path, we really have to work a lot harder, and we have to hold all of these people, creatures, the world a little closer to our chest. Instead of getting colder,
Yeah.
I think we have to get a little
Yeah.
warmer and be a space, because as any form of leader that I've mentioned, you're in charge of holding the space for yourself
Yeah.
and all those you come in contact with to breathe better.
Yeah.
So I want to know, what does that look like? You asked your definition of success. Everyone's is different.
Yeah.
So first you have to start there. What does success mean to you?
Yeah.
If success means to you that everyone on your block thrives, or everyone gets along, or everyone appreciates one another, that's a place to start. If
Yeah.
you believe that no one matters except the people in your church who hate all the same people that you
Yeah.
do and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
then I encourage you to go find that and then hunker down with those people, but leave the rest of us alone
Yeah.
because we don't. And we're on a campaign to build a bright, shiny, inclusive, beautiful, gorgeous future that has people who care about one another and who want to lift all ships
Yeah.
together.
I love that. It's funny as you were saying that, I was just reminiscing. My dad sadly died way too young. He died at 52 years old of a heart attack. And I feel like he was way ahead of the curve because I remember as a very young girl, he always used to drill into us, that it doesn't matter whether you're the brain surgeon or the caretaker in a hospital, all jobs are equally important and one can never do it without the other. It's a team effort. Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And it was something that really stuck with me. And I feel like that reinforces what you're saying, that if we're going to have the most effective teams, we need to be looking at them as teams, not with you've got your superstars up here and the lowly whatever here. So and I can't believe how quick our time is going. I want to make sure that people know as well. You've written a lot of books that you've got out there, some internationally best-selling books. What's one of the most surprising things or that you discovered while either researching or writing or putting together those books?
This is a really great way for me to wrap it up because I could not write my way out of a paper bag for the longest time. As a matter of fact, when I started my first business, which was I pitched my boss in New York City when I worked for Women's Day magazine to go into business together,
Yeah.
where I came up with this, I have no idea.
Wow.
And we would agonize over writing a bloody thank you note. Like we
Yeah.
couldn't, like to do a proposal would be the most agonizing thing, just horrendous. So it's very, the first person we hired was a copywriter. We were just like, we were a mess.
Yeah.
So to think that all this time later, I'm like actually writing stuff that people read and like and appreciate is the funniest thing that the universe, one of the funniest things the universe has ever set up for me, I gotta say. But it's really fun. Just like doing podcasts, they're so fun. You
Yeah.
get to really, share this little glimmer into your life experience
Yeah.
and share it in a way that others can understand, but that also you can make into kind of this universal lesson. And it's just been really fun. Like different
Yeah.
people have invited me into very different kinds of books, and they've all been a blast. I'm just
Yeah.
loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Hey,
Yeah.
it goes back to what we were saying about that collaboration, right? And
Yeah.
relationships that wouldn't
It's so
happen
fun.
but
And
for
they're
the
all
ways.
different communities. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what's going to happen. And it's just
Yeah.
one of those really funny, haha, life. You're hysterical because because really, I'm like the last person that should be writing books, but I am. It's fun.
Ironic having come from Women's Day magazine. That's so funny. And I normally like to end by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had? Doesn't have to be on anything we've talked about, just one of those aha moments for you that changed how you think or show up.
Yeah, well, I kind of alluded to it when we first started. So for me, it's this whole journey into personal development.
Yeah.
I remember really clearly the very first personal development course I ever did, which really changed the whole game of life for me.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there and they had this whole morning thing where they basically took apart and shot holes in the story that most of us have, that
Yeah.
it's all our parents' fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault that I'm shy. It's your fault that people are mean to me. It's
Yeah.
your fault that whatever, right? Whatever it was. I'm pretty clear about like who owns what. Like, okay, this is daddy's fault. This is mommy's fault.
Yeah.
And when they took this whole thing apart and then they said, the truth is they don't get to choose. It's you that are deciding. And I was like, oh my gosh, it is me. Like, yay,
Yeah,
me. I get to decide. But
yeah,
then in the second part of that is that like, oh crap, it's up to me. And it goes back to that taking responsibility
oh,
thing, because once you're over really pretty much the age of like 12 to 14, which is mostly when I start working with people in understanding that they're leaders,
yeah,
once you get around there, blaming your parents or blaming anyone else really doesn't work.
yeah.
And so when I started to get like, oh, it's I'm in charge of my life. Oh crap. So that was a long time ago, and I have to say that it's taken me, and I am still unpacking things where I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah. I
I
love
chose
that.
that when I could have
Yeah,
seen this.
yeah. And I challenge for our listeners out there because I think we all have a tendency to play the blame game, and some are all areas of our life. And blame never serves. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the people around you. It stops you from growing. So what a great message to end on. Where can people learn more about you, Judy? Where do you want us to send them?
Well, you can either check out my website, which is unforgettableBrands.com, two T's, one S, or I'm on LinkedIn at slash Judy Wins. I'm on Insta at JWins CEO Pro, and I'm on Facebook at Judy Wins.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure to put those all in the show notes. So don't worry if you couldn't keep up there trying to get those all down. Thank you so much, Judy, for joining us. It's been such a fun conversation. It just went so quickly. Lots of great nuggets for us. So thank you.
Been wonderful to meet you. Thanks so much, Cindy.
And for our listeners, I hope you got lots of value from this episode. We touched on so many things that can be game changers in your life. So I encourage you even to re-listen. Please make sure to share the episode as well with others who you think can get some value out of this message. And starting with ourselves, negotiating our mindset and learning to take responsibility for our life is a message that we can all benefit from. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already. And again, before we sign off, I'd love to talk just quickly about some ways we can work together. I certainly teach from whether you're a seasoned attorney who's been around practicing forever and a day or a very early stage in your career. I love to jump in and help find a better way to practice, right? Be more authentic, less battle worn, and ultimately be significantly more effective in the process. And I certainly would love to opportunity to either help you personally or your firm be able to thrive and stand out while still bringing a better way to practice law to your firm. If that sounds interesting, check it out at www.practicingwithpurpose.org. And that's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and find ways that you can practice on purpose. Find a better way to practice law so you can rekindle that passion and make a difference in the world, negotiating your best life on your terms. Until next time, take care.